Hey everybody, it's Tim Sackett. I'm back with another episode of HR Famous, and I got one of the most HR famous people here with me. And I would call Daniel a friend. It's Daniel Chait. He's the co-founder. Is it still like co-CEO? Like, what's the title
Yeah,
for
CEO,
for
co-founder,
Greenhouse?
co-founder and CEO is
Co-founder and CEO.
there. You go.
And then obviously John is your other co-founder. I get to talk to both of you guys. I don't know if like everybody gets to do that or not, but like I
Only.
enjoy both of you differently. And I hate both of you the same because you're U of M guys, but
Great to see you again, Tim.
it's great to see you. How's life been treating you?
It's interesting times. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of problems to solve out there, and so you spend a little bit of sleepless nights worrying about them, but then you wake up in the morning and they're exciting things to go tackle.
So it's funny because like I think if we take a look over the last like 8 years in our space in the recruiting technology, HR space, whatever tech space, one of the things that I thought was I'm trying to make sure I phrase this correctly. It is creating a solution for a problem that isn't there, and then or creating a problem and then creating the solution. One of those we do that a lot in technology where we go, "Hey, I have this thing I want to create. There's not really a problem, but I'm going to make people feel like it's a problem." And
Yeah,
to me, that was the whole skills thing. And I'm not saying skills at its general is bad. I think we've always hired for skill and experience and blah blah blah. But we just made this whole skills economy thing, and everyone's trying to sell it. And everyone's not really pulling it off. Over the last few weeks, though, or really probably more than the last few weeks, the thing that I think is a real problem that I want to talk about is candidate fraud.
yeah,
I think it's a real problem. I don't think it's something we've made up. I don't think it's like a make believe thing that we're like trying to sell somebody solutions for. I mean, what I'm seeing one is we know, and you guys have the data at Greenhouse over the last like 18 months of massive amounts of applies happening. So AI is obviously being a part of that. And then now what we're hearing from a lot of TA leaders, and I've heard even like up towards maybe 20 to 25% of candidates potentially, I think Gartner maybe had that number thrown out a couple weeks ago, could be fraudulent. Talk to me what you guys are seeing.
yeah. Look, I mean, fraudulent candidates, fraudulent activity by real candidates, real activity by fake candidates, organized crime.
Real activity by fake
I
candidates.
mean,
That's
there's all
yeah.
kinds of stuff. It's like
Yeah.
it's definitely all happening, and
Yeah.
it's getting worse, not better. We're hearing it
Yeah.
from all sides. The thing that may confound some understanding of it is twofold. I would say number one is these things aren't happening uniformly. So when we talk to customers, some of them are really worried about these kind of like scary North Korean infiltration efforts, which we've seen in the headlines. And I've talked to
Yeah.
other customers who've actually had it happen to them, and they're terrified of it. Other customers are like, yeah, that's not really my problem. It's not really happening here, but I'm getting overwhelmed with applications. I post a job. I have thousands of people to sift through. I don't know where to start. And then like so different people depending on like the job and the company that you're trying to hire in have very different experiences. And then the second reason why it's hard to understand is because there's many different things happening at the same time, because
Yeah.
on the one hand, there's the rise of remote work. And so it used to be we'd all go into an office and a lot of these things couldn't happen. But there was no such thing as a deep fake when I'm interviewing you in an
Yeah.
office.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but now everything's online and remote. The second is that obviously like the job market has changed, and so there's a lot more job seekers looking for a lot fewer jobs and a lot less recruiters, on staff to like try to handle it all. And then obviously the third is the rise of AI in all its forms, creating opportunities for no goodism, all around. And when you mix those three together, it's hard to tease them apart and figure out what's actually going on. But the short
Well,
answer is a lot is happening, a lot of bad stuff is going on, and a lot of customers are really, really worried about these things.
Well, and it seems like a perfect storm is happening right now with all of this to allow this to happen. And my company is a DoD cleared facility, and in the first line of defense of all of this is a recruiter. It's just a normal in the weeds every day fighting the fight recruiter going, oh, I think this candidate's fraudulent, and like my recruiters have to turn with who they believe, whether it's true or not. If they believe something is not right, we have to turn that in, and like the DoD is actually investigating these things. And I'm like, there is no possible way they could ever investigate every single
All
one of
this
these
stuff.
candidates. And I think more than likely they just kind of throw them in database somewhere, and then if something happens, they'll go, "Yeah, we kind of knew," or somebody said, someone raised the flag, and I'm thinking, "Gosh, it has to be better than this. We have to create some kind of help for these recruiters to be able to like." So we call that the big fraud, right? With a North Korea
Yeah.
person trying to hack their way in by getting hired by your company, and then you sending them a laptop with access
Right.
to every your systems. Like
Right.
that is when that happens, you're in trouble, right?
Yes. Yes, when I talk to the people who are really organizing around collectively solving that problem, it tends to be like CISOs. The
Yeah.
security community is very aware of these things, and yeah, the government is asking for reports of these. The FTC is asking for reports of this stuff, particularly on fraudulent job postings that are trying to scam job seekers. Is a whole other thing. But CISOs are banding together and sharing like blacklisted IP addresses and like techniques that they're seeing in the wild and what they can do about it, and so the community is trying to solve these problems. And I mean, I've been doing this, we started Greenhouse 13 and over
Yeah.
13 years ago. I've not seen CISOs, stick their head around in recruiting and a lot, to this level in a long time. So it
By
is
the
really
way, it's
unbelievable.
you using CISO. Tell people what that is, because there's going to be a lot of people listening that have no idea what you're saying.
Right, because they're a new player in this landscape, right? A chief information security officer. These are security people
Yes.
at the companies that we work with, and usually they're off stage. I mean, you don't usually hear about these people, but
So whether you say CISO or CISO, it's potato potato.
fair.
Because I've heard it both ways, and like literally, you saying that, I actually had to ask that question to somebody when they said like, "Oh well, I've been talking like with a CISO, blah blah blah," and I'm like, What did you just say?" Because I'd never heard like that acronym
Ah, a
being
fun new
used.
bit of jargon. Always a fun thing to have on
It's
the way.
always adding in. But I was shocked at when they like this head of TA was like said, "Yeah, like I actually went to my CISO," and they were like, "Holy crap, we didn't even think about you."
Yeah,
Of having this access point, blah, blah, blah. They were thinking about, again, employees like clicking on bad links and all this stuff, like all the major stuff that we've been talking about for years and years and years. And then they go, wait a minute, you might actually hire a bad actor that we don't even know
yeah.
remotely. And they were like, their mind was blown. And then they're like, holy crap, now we have this entire issue like that we have to face.
Yes, and by the way, it's worth starting with this. This is a big problem, not just for the employers, but also for job seekers. Like if
Yes.
you like, I have a huge amount of empathy for what it must be like to look for a job right now. When you think about the fact that not only are you in line with thousands of other legitimate job seekers for these jobs that you want, and it's hard for the companies to tell you apart, it's hard for you to stand out, but now you got to worry about being thrown in with North Korean hackers and like
Yeah.
assessed as like as a threat. Like
That
it's
are experts in trying to figure out how to get hired by your company.
it's
Like,
tough.
I mean, most of us as candidates, we just go, okay, well, here's my profile, right? Here's my resume, and gosh, cross my fingers. I hope I go to the next level. These people are experts in saying, no, no, no. We gamify the system to make sure
Right.
we go to the next level.
That's right. And if someone else is cheating on a job interview and giving better answers than you because they're getting AI helping them, that also creates. So this is a problem for everyone.
Yeah,
For sure. So look, I think look the sort of North Korean spy versus spy like state intrigue stuff. It's real. I've seen actual customers have it happen to them. It's not that it's not that common. I think it is kind of narrowly focused for now, although it's a growing threat.
yeah.
It gets a lot of the headlines, right?
Yeah, if you're
But
hiring like cooks or warehouse associates, I don't think you truly have to worry about it. But that's the problem is so many companies are like, yeah, that's not
it's
us.
not us, right?
And it's not a problem until it is your problem. And then it's the biggest problem your company might have ever faced.
You got it.
Like
And
you
you
could have
talked
your
about that,
entire,
right. And like
it
you
could shut
talked
you
about
down
the
completely.
DoD, Department of Defense contractor. Like you might be, I don't know, like to your point, a cook. You might be a catering company. You might be, IT services like laptop break fix. You
Yeah.
might be a contractor like doing construction. And you might not worry, oh, the North Koreans aren't interested in me, but like, what building are you doing construction in? Like, what event are you
Hmm.
catering? And
Yes.
and I have heard of some of these infiltration efforts happening at these like downstream,
Yeah.
providers of service providers, and where they can get into. So it's real. And again, like, this is not typically the kinds of things that corporate recruitment is really optimized for in history. Where it's open, it's you put recruiters in a room, they're all going to talk as much as they can and share tips, and they want to network with everyone, and they're optimists, they want to believe in that next interview is going to be a
Yeah.
perfect hire, and so it's a big mindset shift as well.
Well, Dan, I mean, the industry has worked for a decade to try to break down this kind of, we talked about this and being empathetic to candidates and how they're applying. And so we've tried to break down friction forever. It used to be a decade plus ago, we as TA leaders would actually build in like roadblocks and speed bumps to try to get candidates just to fall off, right? Because we had so many people applying. And there's a little bit of fear I have right now that with as we start to see more and more applies, we're going to start to see companies revert back to that old way of thinking of, oh well, I'm just going to put in more speed bumps so we'll get, and they think they're actually getting higher quality when in reality they're just getting survival
Just getting
scores,
less,
right?
right? Yeah.
Who is the most desperate
Who's
to go
willing to
through
put
your
up with
stupid
your
hoops, right?
Who's willing to put up with your
Yeah.
painful process?
So how do we combat fraud and still leave this open aperture at the top of the funnel and getting everybody in so we can get the highest quality? Like,
Yeah.
what are you guys thinking about at Greenhouse, like in terms of how to combat big F fraud? And then we can talk about little F fraud.
Yeah, there's a variety of ways. I mean, like every fun, interesting problem, there's not a simple solution.
No.
Um, I think it starts though with, to your point about the amount of energy that an applicant exerts. Like part of what is causing or contributing to this problem is the fact that it's gotten so easy to apply and interview to so many jobs. I don't think the answer is just to make the experience worse for people, though.
Yeah.
I think the answer is to make it easier for good candidates, legitimate candidates, to help themselves stand out and stand out amongst a sea of people who didn't put in any effort and who may not be legitimate. And so, the thing that employers want to know, to your point, is like, who's the best person that's the most committed this to this opportunity, and let's give those job seekers a way to like raise their hand and flag themselves as like, no, this is the perfect job for me, and here's why I'm the best for your company. I've done my research. I know who you are. I want to work at your company. I've got exactly the relevant experiences. And today, it's really hard when you're just one of n thousands of resumes in a pile to
Yeah.
stand out in that way. And so I think rather than make it harder, I think let's make it easier for people to shine.
I think it's interesting. You guys have good data around this as well in terms of people's when they opt in to a certain company and they want like, job alerts and things of this sort, like we discount, I think, way too much the fact that somebody actually wants to work for you. It's hard because we think, oh, if they applied to us, they must want to work for us. And you're like, with the AI stuff, maybe not. So you're like, I love that kind of idea of like, how do we figure out then who really wants to work for us? Like who's like, hey, you're my company of choice. Like I would rather work for you than somebody
You
else.
got
Because
it.
I think it's so powerful that just that um what do we call it? Like that, you know, opt in, of doing that probably like makes you a better candidate than a lot of other ones just because your desire to work there.
I think it's an important signal. And as you talked about, I mean, you kind of went to the history. Like when I applied to a job out of college, I put resumes that I printed out at Kinko's into envelopes and sent them. It took effort. I can only
Yes.
do, 10 or maybe 20.
Yeah.
And so like that mattered. And
Yeah.
they knew I put some effort
Who
in.
and who are you gonna send the resume with a good
They knew I
paper,
bought a
right?
stamp. I mean, it cost, it was like a thing. And so it was some signal that I at least wanted the job. I at least thought I had a reasonable shot of getting it, or I wouldn't have put in the effort. And now the amount of effort it takes to apply for a job, partly in thanks to companies like ours who've made it really easy and comfortable to apply for a job, but partly because candidates are using AI to autofill job applications by the hundred, there's a lot less signal in the fact that somebody's applied. Um,
Yeah.
and so we need new ways of signal. And I think your point is right that like a candidate standing up and saying, I'm really motivated to work at your company. And that can take a lot of forms. Like what you see a lot of the best practice advice now is go outside of the job application and like find the person on LinkedIn and send them a very personalized note. And I can tell you, I got a LinkedIn message out of the blue from somebody who said, hey, I've been a Greenhouse customer at 3 different companies. I always thought the product was great. I'm really interested in it. I'm a designer. I'm looking for my next design role. I think there's a lot of really interesting design problems at Greenhouse. I would love to help be part of the solution. Here's my portfolio. If you're hiring,
Yeah.
look like, yeah, you better believe I forwarded that to my recruiting team.
Oh yeah, like when you have those, even if you don't have an opening, you're like, if we do have an opening, this person is going to be at the front of the line, and we're
I want
going
to
to
know who that
talk to
person is.
them
That's right.
that they went through the time to be able to do this. I always think too, like if I'm a hiring manager, that's the one I want. Like, hey, why do you want to come work here for me in this company in this role? I want like send me like a 60, 90 second, 3 minute video
Yep.
where you're telling me this from your heart. I want to know.
Yeah.
Because some people could, and maybe some people would be shitty at it and they couldn't, wouldn't be good. But I think that like transparency of that for me would come through and be like, look, I can't, like, I don't really know a lot of what you're going to, but here's what, like, whatever. Like, I don't know what it looks like, but I'm like, gosh, there has to be somewhere that we can add that signal, right? That we go, okay, hey, this person really wants to come work for me, for this company, wherever that might be.
I think you're right in that you have to be careful about these things because, you're not hiring someone to be an on-camera, actor.
Exactly.
You're not
Yeah.
hiring an anchor
Yeah.
for the 6 o'clock
And
news.
maybe there's different
So
mediums to do. Like you could write me a paragraph or you could do a video, you could do whatever, like choose your thing. But the problem is still my bias might be towards the person that did the video. I feel like, oh, they're like, that's what I like from a medium. I just don't know. Like, but again, I just think it's a huge thing for us to figure out like how that is.
yeah, and that's right. And then when you think about actual fraud,
Yeah.
um, first it's literally like as we talked about the outside, it's kind of like there's people out there in your hiring funnel you don't even know who they are. So like you need some way of assuring your hiring managers, ultimately like your company, that
Yeah.
people that we're interviewing and talking to and hiring are actually who they say they are, and not just like maybe having a friend do the interview. I've heard of that, where it's
Oh
like
yeah.
send in the
Yeah.
smart guy to do the interview and then someone else shows up for the job. Or maybe it's actually like truly a North Korean spy, which obviously a lot worse.
Yeah.
There's a whole need for that. Separately, there's a whole need for like just even are the person, even if you know who you're talking to, like is it them answering the question or is there like an AI
Yeah.
bot off screen
Yep.
doing the coding test for them? And so there's a
Yeah. Oh,
lot.
I've seen so many teleprompter, like GPT language model, like people with on their phone that it's almost simultaneous. The person's answering the question, and the candidates are like, "Gosh, that's a great question," and they're kind of like biding a few seconds so that it comes like, "Well, as I think of it, like then they start like they're just reading and like." So there's all kinds of tech, like people are trying, like, oh, did their eyes leave the screen? Are they reading something else? Right?
I had a
Or
customer
the
tell me that.
person doing the interview from the IP address, does it match? Like if it's from New Jersey, but there's telling you that they're in Austin, like why is there these kind of things? There's always little pieces of tech that
Yes.
potentially could be kind of put together to go, yellow flag here. This person might not be who you're talking to.
Yeah, I had a customer tell me that they caught someone or they flagged someone because every time they asked a question, the person would cough and take a drink of water. It was
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
yeah, once or twice you got to force
Ah,
people to like,
that's
hang
that's a
on a
great
second.
that's a great question you're asking.
It's like for an hour long interview, like every single time, like taking that pause is like a little obvious. So there are these
By the way, I played craps the other day. I was on a cruise ship and played craps. And before the guy threw the dice, he had
uh,
to take a sip of beer every single time.
yeah.
And I'm like, oh, can you just get on with it already? You're annoying.
And
And I would do that if I'm
by the
interviewing
50th time, was he
somebody.
still able to find the dice, or I don't know. Um, So yeah, like again, and like maybe that works. I heard a thing also where like they're asking people to hold up their hands because apparently a deep fake can't. It can
Oh,
fake
good.
your face, but it can't
It,
fake your hands yet. So
yeah. Well, it shows like the weirdness of it when you do
so
that.
like that's all fine as far as like that is what you might want. I mean, I would give the same advice. Do that right now because it's kind of the best we have.
Yeah.
But those are not systematic solutions. If you have a determined bad guy, the technology is going to get better. It's going to be able to show hands. Like
Yeah.
your point is going to be able to answer the questions quicker.
So
You're not going to be able to train your hiring managers. Like there needs to be a more systematic approach, I think, to tackling these
I
things.
had a TA leader go, "Is this really again that big of a deal?" Which I think you and I both go, "It's a big deal and it's growing." Because they're like, "Well, as soon as we do the I-9s and we do the background check, like they're going to get caught." And I'm like, "Ugh." I don't really like to admit this publicly, but at one point in my career running HR at Applebee's, I had the same Hispanic cook working in 9 kitchens. And
This was
when I
before.
did the audit, it was their I-9 was valid. They had a valid ID and they
Yeah.
had a valid social security number. They just happened to be working 380 hours a week.
Right. Right. I mean, I don't know if you saw there was a Wall Street Journal article this morning about this issue, and they talked about it. There was this woman that was running a laptop farm in Minnesota, and the North Koreans would like email her and say, "Hey, like fill in this I-9 and send it to the hiring manager," and she
Yeah.
did.
Oh
So
yeah. It's
you know, it's
there. That's to
you're in
me
an
that
adversarial world where like the old way of being like, look, I looked at their resume and I read their cover letter and I looked them in the eye and I trust this person. Like that's not enough anymore.
what I always wonder, like, so we've become accustomed because of the way the process and technology work that we only checked background and all of these things at the end when we finally found someone to hire because of time, money, blah blah blah. Right. I'm wondering because of AI and how fast we might be able to do this, potentially do we start throwing this on the front side of candidates? Prove to me who you are, validate who you are, and now we'll move you on into the system, like, or in the process.
I actually think it's a little different than that. So in the old days when you had office buildings that everybody went to, the old thing like if you were a secure, and if you cared about who was coming in, you had to swipe your badge in the turnstile every morning.
Yeah.
It's not that you swipe your badge on the turnstile on the first day and then they just let
Yeah.
anyone in
Yeah. Yeah.
because you're wearing the company jacket. Same thing. Like you need to show who you are throughout the process. Are you the same person who applied for the job whose name is on the resume? Are you the same person that's interviewing right now that applied for the job? Could be someone different. Are you the
Yeah.
same person signing the offer letter that actually I interviewed, or maybe they had a ringer do it? Are you now the same person a week or a month later who I hired? And there's no one point in time you can't say, oh, let's move it earlier in the process because that's just having one turnstile swipe. In fact, what you need is effectively you need to know who your people are all the time, and that goes
Yeah.
start of the funnel. Otherwise you're talking to potentially people that are wasting your time, people that are cheating, or even threat actors at the beginning that cost time and money, and then eventually as they become employees you want to make sure that you still got that in place.
Yeah, 'cause I think another one that I've heard, recently, which we've known has gone on, and again, you go back, it really, like you said, there's a core, foundational thing here around remote work, and it's allowed people to work multiple jobs, especially in the IT world, right?
And apparently,
I
in the
I'm
quarter of
fairly certain I know a person in my life that has worked at least one, if not multiple jobs, and then shopped that stuff out, like, on Fiverr, and
oh yeah,
nobody knew for years that was
everyone
happening.
everyone knows people like that. And
It's
by the way, everybody I know has had that happen at their company.
yeah, it's well, I've had it happen at mine where the client actually said, "Hey, we know this person's working another job. By the way, we don't care because their work is so good.
We'll
We
take
just need him to show up to these meetings he keeps
yeah,
missing because he's working this
25% of
other
Bob is
job."
still better than 50% of anyone else. Yeah, 100% of everyone else.
So there's that. Okay, little fraud. You and I discussed this
Yeah,
kind of
yeah,
before we came on. Like, um, there's systems I've seen because I get to see all this stuff, and like people are like, "Oh, well, I can tell you that if a candidate used AI to build their resume, and when it comes into our system,
yeah.
it'll get knocked down because they're using AI." And I'm like, do I care that AI use like they use now? Again, if they're lying on their resume, that's one thing, and maybe they're saying, "Hey, this was used AI was used to build this resume, so you need to dig in a little more." But even then, I'm like, there's so many systems that you're like, "Hey, it was built on AI. Now I put it in another AI system that showed so it doesn't look like it's built by AI." Like it's crazy.
Yeah, to me that sounds like not that's not something I would be concerned about. I mean, using AI to build your resume in 2025 is just called typing. Like
Yeah, exactly.
each word has AI in it. Like,
I want it actually probably is a good skill. I want somebody to go, "Oh, so you know how to use GPT or whatever to like
well,
do
and I
some
got
work."
news for you.
Wait.
The company is using AI to write the job description. You better
For
believe it.
sure. Yeah.
Why shouldn't they? I
Yeah.
mean, AI is really good at writing job descriptions. It's probably writing better, more fair, more objective, more accurate, more useful job descriptions. So I have
Yeah.
no problem with somebody using AI to, or automation to prepare their materials for applying, or even to prepare themselves, for a test. I had a job seeker email show me this was mind blowing. He said I was applying for a CS job at Greenhouse to work on
Yeah.
our team and I really wanted the job. So I found everything that the company has ever published about how you hire, about the best ways to interview, about your best practices. I read everything that you've ever published about this job, about your CS approach and team of everything. I fed it all into a GPT and I created a trainer.
Yeah.
And then I sat there with this trainer and I did practice tests. And it asked me questions and I gave it answers and it rated me. And it was amazing. And I'm like, yes, you
Yeah,
should practice for the test. You should study for the SAT. It's different than showing up for the test with the answers written in the inside of your sleeve.
exactly. Yeah.
So like to me, preparing for the test is very different than cheating on the test. And so I think it's great. I think job seekers should use tools to help find a job and prepare for that job. I just don't think.
It is it's a little bit of insight to the future of like micro learning
Oh
and
yeah,
really personalized learning as well. Because like
100%.
again, you could have, a bunch of salespeople working for you, all that have potentially different little weaknesses in the overview of training that we would give, like, oh, well, here's how we sell,
Yeah,
might not hit on any of them. But then again, you can feed all this information, who they are, into like something else, and bam, here's exactly what
that's
your
right.
issue is. We're gonna fix
That's
that. I
right.
think is
That's
amazing.
right. That's right. And so I think whether you're talking about sales training or developer training or interview training, by the way, for interviewers as well as candidates, it's like, yeah, let's give very specific in the moment, ideas. So like, I think that's great. I don't think there's a problem with it. And I think this notion of using AI to write your resume or job, like that's not a thing.
Non-issue.
It's like, I remember when people would say, no one's going to apply to a job on the internet. Like, how impersonal. Of course, you're going to send a handwritten cover letter with your resume and mail it to
No.
HR. Like, yeah, that didn't last. Like those point of views have ways of being quickly made obsolete. And I
It
think
might be actually the one differentiator I know somebody could have right now. I
it
can't
very
tell you
well
the last time I've actually had a handwritten note with a resume in it. Like, I would be like, immediately be like, "Oh my gosh,
yes,
mail?"
it all comes full circle.
Um, do you think so? We have to try to figure out ways to do this. We know like job samples, and again, using AI, you can create all kinds of job samples that we never could now. So like, hey, prove to me you can actually do this job. Now we know somebody could, fake that. The other piece could be just this kind of like, all we're coming back to in-person interviews. Like, we're meeting face to face. Even if I have to come to you or go to a city, or you're coming here,
That's
we're
right.
going to start paying more money to have people come in.
And look, I think for certain hires, like I've talked to customers about this problem, and they've said for executive hires, like absolutely. I had a customer say, our enterprise sales motion is largely face to face. We go fly it to customers to pitch.
Yeah.
So if I'm going to hire an enterprise sales rep, I'm going to meet them face to face because it's part of the job.
Yeah,
Now,
for
it's not
sure.
part of every job, so you don't have to do that for everyone. But yeah, I think if the job has that, in person, meaningful in person component to being successful at it, I think an in person interview is absolutely called for. Um, but I don't think it scales to like, you're not going to hire every SDR that way. You're not going to hire every, junior finance, person that way in a remote company. And so we need scalable ways to feel good about hiring as well.
All right, I'll get us out on this. What if you're a TA leader today? What do you do? How do you get started? What are you looking at?
I think the first thing to do is to prioritize the issues because there is a lot of hype and there's a lot of noise around a bunch of these different things. And so, are you more concerned about top of funnel unqualified applicants overwhelming you and needing time to focus? Are you more concerned about people cheating on job interviews and hiring people that don't have the right skills? Are you more concerned about infiltration by spies?
Yeah.
And like prioritize those things. And then, as we talked about, there's ways to tackle these things that are more or less systematic or more or less just like training. But like if you're applying the wrong solution, then you're going to have people showing their hands in a video when really
Yeah.
what you're worried about is how do I filter my inbox from 2,000 down to 20.
Yeah, for sure. And I think if you haven't, go find your CISO or go find
So,
somebody in your IT department that is concerned with security
yep.
and just ask the question
Yeah.
like, hey, I think we should have a talk. Is this a real issue for us? Could it be? Are we concerned? Does legal need to be involved? Because I'll tell you, the moment I hear somebody say that's not an issue for us, I go, oh my god, like, have you talked to
You haven't
somebody?
talked to the right
Like,
person yet. Yeah.
yeah, because I'm telling you right now, the moment your systems get hacked and get held hostage, you are dead in the water, and that becomes the number one issue for your company of all time, probably. And you think it's not an issue. It's not an issue until it's the biggest issue ever, and
It's not
that
a mistake.
becomes the
It's not a
problem.
mistake most companies will make twice.
But they also, it's a mistake that most companies, when made, weren't ready for until after it was made, and now the next time they're ready for it, which the next time will probably never happen because now they're ready.
Because
And it's like
you already paid all the full
and
freight.
I hate it because it's the HR risk thing that I hate. Like, I'm like, I don't want to eliminate all risk. I want to mitigate risk, but at the same time, like, well, maybe there is some risk I need to eliminate.
I'll end on this. A quote from I was talking to a customer, the CISO or CISO at
Yeah.
a customer, and he said, we're a virtual organization. We're a fully distributed, about 10,000 employees worldwide. No, I don't have a physical office. All I have is the cloud and my laptops. So who I send that laptop to literally defines who I let inside my organization. And if I'm not caring about that, what am I caring about?
Yeah.
And it
That's,
matters.
yeah, it matters. All right. Daniel Chait, how do people find you when they want to talk about fraud or anything around greenhouse?
or, or anti-fraud, as I like to think about it. It's
Anti-fraud.
my
Yeah.
favorite topic. Yeah, so we're at greenhouse.io, and you can find us on all the socials.
Awesome. And I'm going to see you guys in a couple of weeks at the Greenhouse Open in New York City. I won't be at the San Francisco one. I'm sure you'll probably be at both, or maybe you and John are
Absolutely.
dividing and
I'll be in
conquering.
San Francisco on the 5th and here in New York on the 12th. Looking forward to it.
Awesome. Thanks for coming on and talking about this. It's a big issue, and I appreciate it. That's it, guys. HR Famous, we're out. Thank you for another episode. We'll try to do better next time.